All right, I think everything is loading up here. Okay, it looks like Facebook is up, the tubes is up. Hey, everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, just sitting here drinking my morning coffee, looking sexy as hell as usual. Thought I would do a coffee chat for you guys. I think the lives are going to take up the most of my video content for a little bit. I'm still going to throw some informative stuff. We're going to keep the vlogs up. Uh, Reels, shorts, and lives, those seem to really be what gives me the most followers and traffic. So that's what we're going to do, right? Because at the end of the day, that's what grows everything. So I'm going to be a lot more chill about a lot of things too. I had to think on it, pray on it, sleep on it. Um, I could just have filters in place to handle most of the nonsense on here. I don't have the same concerns right now I used to in my situation in life. So a lot of unfiltered stuff can be in here. And there's no reason to let any of it get to me. I got to look at it as, hey man, it's all just business. But to cut the spam down, though, we're going to put a spam filter in, or we're going to put a filter in that people can't post nonstop. They can't do the same post 50 times in a row. You know, you got to do 10 seconds between. I think that'll resolve some issues. Run the filter for inappropriate comments, and then outside of that, let people kind of do their thing. I don't let it get to me. Just a lot of stuff had to be in there for personal reasons, right? So let me put my Amazon links up. Get some Amazon links up for everybody. And we'll make some other posts while we wait on people. It's like yesterday, we didn't have much of anything the first 15 minutes. It took 13 minutes to get a comment, and then it blew up, and we got hundreds of views, hundreds of comments. I think we'll see some of the same. That's kind of how the coffee chats have been going recently, at least. And hit that like button as soon as you get in. That'll get more people in. Right? Buy stocks, good morning. Good morning to you also. Buy stocks, how you doing, brother? There we go. See, we're getting comments already. That'll be good for the traffic. I'm doing phenomenal, man. How are you doing? Although I've realized the arms, we've realized now that I've been running these coffee chats later, it's the lighting. So as soon as the sun comes up, all of a sudden I got veins. It's kind of funny. I didn't realize that until the last couple of days. But I can run these later. It's not a big deal. I'm not going to sit around making as many videos, so I'm going to do more live streams. I still have like 50 videos not uploaded. So I'm going to focus on lives, vlogs, and shorts pretty much for a bit. We're going to live stream a lot. Because as far as even my tubes go, this is really where most of the real benefit to me comes from. And I just don't care about the fitness industry itself. I want to talk about real current events. And it's the reason I've been playing that game is I don't know who they are, is because if we're going to talk about anything of substance, we should talk about current events, not Dr. Mike, whatever. Vegan gains. Like nobody cares. Like these are of no value to anybody. We're going to talk about world events. If we want to talk about other people besides me on my outreach, let's talk about Charlie Kirk. Let's talk about what's happening in the world. Things of actual substance. Plus, because I'm streaming multiple platforms, people on other platforms won't know the topic. So people are chiming in on my Facebook. They don't know. They may not even follow the tubes or fitness there at all. So it's not useful to all my audiences, you know. Gold and silver have been going wild. I wouldn't know buy stocks outside of my wheelhouse. I've always been told buy property, all right? That land is the most valuable investment. So this stuff is outside of my world, really. Unless you want to send me some now, if you're wanting to gift me some things like that, I'll be more than happy. You know, I'll be more than happy to have that. I'm making a quick post, and I'll get right back. I'll get right back to you here, brother. Yes, land number one. You know, which I stand to inherit a fair amount eventually. You know, although family members I've had to have conversations about some of that, which is going to be sold off or not. But you know, that's besides the point. I want to keep my personal life off here. So, do you think different regions in Texas have different laws, or is the law in Texas just the same? So straight edge, are you an American? That would help me in answering that question. Right. So if you want me to give an answer that you will understand, I need to know what country you live in for context. And then I'll explain. Okay, so that makes sense. All right. So you have a small number of laws that the entire United States follows. Think of it as being almost like the European Union, a little more centralized than that, but the similar concept, right? And you'd call the USA. The individual states comprise most of your laws. If you obviously you live in the US, any law that applies to all of the US applies to you, but it's not that many. Makes sense. It's not a large number of laws, and some of it needs to be removed. It, quite frankly, really shouldn't be their purview. You know, like if we were to follow the Constitution, anything involving firearms, the federal government technically is supposed to stay out of it. They shouldn't have anything, but they do. Like the National Firearms Act, so suppressing your machine guns and suppressors, and like they have a say in that. They do the background checks, but those are all unconstitutional. So setting that stuff aside, though, there's a tiny number of laws that the U.S. has. Okay, the states comprise most of your laws, and if you live in that state, those laws apply across the board. Now, just like towns and cities where you live, cities and towns can have individual laws that they enforce. Make sense? Yeah, we're live government. I've put in a spam filter because I've decided we're gonna be a little bit more of a free for all. Something I thought and prayed on what I want to do with all this. Yeah. Now, keep in mind, no regional law can supersede a larger law. So, in other words, you can't override a federal law as a state. A town or a city can't override state laws or federal laws. This came a major debate here in Texas in the last few years because Texas tried to overthrow more or less the certain parts of the NFA from the ATF involving firearms. So Texas has actually been having a fight to remove U.S. laws over firearms to get them out of the state, to make them unenforceable. And it was one of those where we stepped in and said anything that falls under the 1934 NFA, like suppressors, that if they're made in the state of Texas and sold in the state of Texas, that the federal government has no oversight. And pretty much our legislatures and governors said that any federal agent who tries to arrest a Texas citizen over it will be arrested themselves. It hasn't worked out too well yet, but it's still an ongoing fight. But that's basically what the state of Texas declared, that so if we make these items that are federally regulated firearm accessories, if we make them here and they stay within the state, you can't, hands off for you. If they're stamped made in Texas, they're not going to have a serial number. They're not going to be registered. You're not going to have oversight over them. And if you try to arrest here, we're going to have our Texas police officers arrest you and detain you as a federal agent. All right. Which again, technically you're not supposed to be able to do, over superseding federal laws with the state. But their argument is it's an unconstitutional law, that technically the federal government, the U.S. government, is not supposed to restrict weapons in any capacity. Free for all, meaning I've had a lot of things that I keep off of here for legal purposes that have nothing to do with me personally. Like, make sense, intoxicated? I know it doesn't make sense. Let me be clear. I have an agreement with a lawyer to stop certain things from coming through in my comments on all my social media. So because of that, I've had to be super, super strict in everything I allow everywhere. So that being said, I'm loosening up a little bit on some of this. I'm gonna give a try, because I don't personally get upset, guys. I really don't. There's a point where I worry that it's just bad for my audience. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna give it a try. You guys will see shortly. A whole lot of people are gonna be able to post all of a sudden. I want to see if we can keep it manageable, reasonable, by just putting in a spam filter. Yeah, I really don't get bent out of shape, dude. Like, do you think I really care if someone calls me a toothless cuck? Do you really think it affects me? I mean, people got to be serious. I don't cry myself to sleep over it. It's just some losers on the internet. Yeah, it's literally some losers on the internet who are probably fat. They don't lift anything. They're on the spectrum and live in their mom's basement. Like, I'll get over it. But the point is, I worry about it flooding the comments so much that my regular people can't have real conversations. And that's the problem. But I think, I technically stand to make more money. People are right. Yeah. But again, I don't think people understand, like haters, that it really doesn't get to me. Like, I really and truly don't care. And I'm at a point with it where it's like, as long as it's allowing us to still have conversations, dude, if some dude every 10 seconds wants to call me a broke cuck or whatever, that's fine. And I have to keep certain things in here still, but they're in a filter. And that'll be good enough. So I'm going to run an aggressive filter. I'm going to run I have a filter set to hide particularly aggressive comment. So basically, anything that the AI picks up as a crazy insult or out of line is just going to block. I'm going to let their AI do its job. So anything that they feel is inappropriate, it's just going to block it. And if people do enough of those and the AI blocks enough of those and people's stuff, it'll go back and start blocking their accounts anyways, in general. So I'm just going to let their system handle it. All right. Because in the meantime, and I'm just not going to allow links. So basically people can't link hate videos. And that resolves most of the problems. You know. The only problem is like you put stuff in there like that that's common sense, and then people try to get around it. They're so obsessed that they will go out of their way to, if you go to this person's place, you can find it. It's like, think about, understand being that much of a loser. Yeah, large is unbanned. No, large is unbanned. So, but again, I'm going to see if their automated system will make people behave to some extent like civil human beings. And if not, we'll figure it out. But that's the main problem is like if people could do it limited as just insults, it wouldn't be a problem. But it's the linking and advertising hate videos that's a problem too. So it's like I got to figure out how do I allow people to post and keep the stupid stuff like that out without banning anybody? And that's the tricky part. Because I would rather not ban them. Like, to be honest, I would rather not ban anybody. But you can't seem to stop people from posting certain stupid things. Like, they try to find ways around the filters. And it's like, why? Like, you could just stay here and throw the insults, and I wouldn't need to ban you if you would only stick to insults instead of advertising for hate videos, and which is all nonsense and lies. Eventually, I'm going to get all that stuff taken down. Eventually, certain stuff with my finances will change to where I'm going to have the legal representation to just sort that. And in which case, then they'll go down the road and figure out lawsuits and whatever they need to do. That's just a matter of time. So eventually I'm going to be able to get all that stuff taken down, like the guy who made whatever, the delusional video that got 2 million views. I'm eventually going to sue him. The video will one day be taken down and I'll sue him, and probably make $500,000 off of it, or whatever little bit he has in his cup shed. You got to figure he made a pretty good chunk of money off that video. So people don't grasp that too. Hate videos like that from those channels, that's money. That's a business for them. Right? They don't need to be truthful. They just need to draw enough attention with it to get thousands of dollars. So you figure a video like that, he made $5,000 off of it. They used to, so Straight Edge, at one time they did. So if they enroll me back into some of the programs they did, they'll go through and delete all that. At one time they went through and did all that. My partner manager, but it was only a 6-month program to where they made us sign NDAs. They taught us a bunch of stuff. And she went through and found like the 12 most egregious channels or bigger videos and said, yeah, we just deleted them for you. We banned those channels and we deleted all that. The problem is, until they have someone who's like a manager over your thing again, they don't do anything. Does that make sense? But yeah, it's technically against their rules, right? So, now I click on you. Can't you just put people in timeout if they post? Well, I don't care about me. Tyrone, I don't care about mean stuff. Like, let me be clear. That doesn't bother me. It's the redirecting to hate videos. It's bringing up things that trying to squeeze stuff through that I illegally cannot allow to be here. Make sense? So I have an agreement with a lawyer to keep certain stuff off of all my social media. And that's a problem. And that won't be a problem for much longer. Like eventually that goes away. But we're going to do a lot more lives. And the reason I'm having to figure all this out, I'm going to be doing a lot of lives like I've done the last few days. I'm probably going to be live streaming 2 to 3 hours every day. So I got to figure out how to make it reasonable. Yeah, YouTube search. But you notice other platforms take care of that. Like Facebook doesn't have that problem at all. Like, dude, I'm going to ignore things that I find silly. I'm just going to ignore, like CJ's comments. He can ask it, but see, I can just ignore it. We cannot address it. But Facebook, for example, doesn't put up with that at all, and they'll go back and ban your parent account. Like they'll go through and run a scan to figure out who your real account is, your identity, and they'll put restrictions on you. Yeah, Facebook is super good at protecting their creators. YouTube is not. They don't protect their creators very well. So with the colder, darker weather coming in where I live, I'll need to supplement vitamin D every day or eat a lot of salmon or vitamin D supplements. Fine. No, in that case, that's actually a valid use of a supplement. So straight edge, when I say most supplements are useless, I'm not saying 100%. I'm saying 95 to 99%. There's a lot of supplements that are situationally useful. Okay. If you lived at the equator, vitamin D3 is a useless supplement. If you live in a climate where you're not getting enough sunlight, vitamin D3 all of a sudden becomes a beneficial supplement. It's situationally useful. And that's pretty well documented. There's a reason it's added to certain foods. It's a reason it's added to those foods. I'm going to get some coffee. Hold on. I'll be right back. Yeah. So, yeah. I don't know. I feel like some stuff I can clearly address if it gets brought up, something stupid, like if a troll comes through and says, we have a copy of the crash report of that crash and you're not the owner of the vehicle. I could simply say, I have a copy of the crash report and it very clearly has my full legal name listed as the owner of the vehicle on the official crash report from the police. It says it on my copy. Did you guys not get an official copy from the sheriff's office? You must have doctored it, because if you went and got an official copy from them and paid for it, it's got my name on it. So pretty straightforward. Yeah, it's really weird. Well, because Peppermint, I can't own a $30,000+ vehicle if I'm on welfare, so they have to. Their story falls apart. Right? That would disqualify me from all the programs they claim that I'm on, the social programs. Like it would disqualify me. So they can't have it be true. Just like they're seem to be oblivious to the fact that I pay 100% of the bills of this household with no one else actually paying any bills and no government assistance. You know, it's just, and people can claim that all they want, but there are literally no Section 8 houses in my neighborhood. There's zero. I checked. But it's just such a weird thing. But if people hate you, they can't have you be successful at all. Yeah. Well, I don't have to have, like, I've never needed a car. I went several years without one when I lived further in town. Right. But even here, it's like I can Uber, I can have stuff delivered. I have a big enough social circle. Like my inner circle are coming through anyways. If I'm going to go do anything, one of them can pick me up. Not a big deal. Yeah. You know. And that's the thing too, you know. Yeah. Again, my social network of bros and stuff is just not a problem. Um, so if I need to trip anywhere, I prefer to, but eventually I'll get back to it. It's just the cost of maintaining a car. Yeah. No, it's a horrible investment. Yeah, they depreciate immediately. Luke said, "Morning, Jason. I had a rather interesting event happen a few hours ago. Just got home from work, bodybuilding related. Well, let's hear about it." Compassion says, "Why so many people these have 5 accounts on Instagram and Facebook, just like one main account?" Um, Facebook is different because your pages. So I have one of each, but like for me, for example, everything I own has a blue check. Right. So I have a Facebook profile, but I have a big fitness page that's also Jason Blaha. So I have my profile with all my friends, family, clients on it as friends, but then I have a page because it's my fitness page. Does that make sense? So I have 2. I only have one Instagram and I have one YouTube now, though. But everything I have has a check mark. Like every single account I have has a check mark, right? Including my tubes here. Even in my practice, I had a first bodybuilding death. A mom was 6 months pregnant, taking Lasix for cutting heart failure. Oh, she was also on Anavar, Winstrol, and Clen. The diuretics. Luke, diuretics cause a lot of harm. Now you got the heart failure there. You want to know? I'll give you a heads up, a warning, in case you deal with more bodybuilders. The one that's going to give the kidneys is going to be diazide. Because it being potassium sparing, Lasix not being potassium sparing. So, right, potential heart attack from the Lasix. And then they avoid that by, let's use a potassium sparing like diazide, and then you're like Flex Wheelers and lose your kidneys. Morning, coach. Have you got any advice for training the lower abs? You mean the lower ab? Yeah, hanging leg raises. Just be aware, Callum. It's like saying training the lower versus upper bicep. I'm a big fan of hanging leg raises, weighted crunches. They all work. But be aware, Callum. It's only one muscle. You don't. we call them abs for visual purposes, but if we're going to talk about a muscle, it's only one muscle. It's one muscle. Luke, you're in the medical field, if you care to explain. It's not multiple muscles, it's just one muscle like your bicep is. Those are tendons running across it that create the weighted crunches are fine. It's still going to work the whole muscle. Yeah, exactly. Loop diuretics are no joke, whether it's nephrology, like you said, with potassium sparing ones or not. Potassium is not something to screw with. Yeah. Peppermint, so my background is more biochemistry than anatomy. I sucked at anatomy. Ah, yes. All these stupid Latin words. I hated that. Here's all these bones. We need you to label every one of these processes and write it down. We need you to write it on a piece of paper from memory. It's like, are you kidding me? Fuck you. All right. I did all that. Had to bring our cat in. Take our cat home and put it in the freezer. Oh my God. Yep. Did all that. I did okay with A&P. A&P 1 and 2. I think it was A&P 2 where we had to have the cat, I think. We had to dissect our own cat. Not our personal, like this was our given, you know. They provided you a cat. It was already dead, of course. They didn't give you a live cat. Even in Texas, we had a class called Body Systems, not my favorite one. During my thesis presentation, I bought a Rosetta Stone replica and started with, can I just speak English and hold this for you to translate as a joke, right? No, it must be in Latin. I mean, which makes sense. We understand why they use Latin for medical. I don't know, some of the people don't. Okay. Does anyone here not understand why? Anybody? It's because it's a dead language. It doesn't change. Changes in colloquialisms and meanings don't affect it. Meaning the Latin hasn't changed in thousands of years. It's all the words have the exact same meaning. Unlike English, which is a current living language, the words change. They change in colloquialism, modern dialects, regions. Yeah, many European languages are based on Latin. Of course, we have English, which is based upon, let's base it on 17 different languages and just mix it all up for some fun. Let's just shake it all up. Shake it all up and have a party. Hey, Coach, do you think languages are fake? You know what? I think your mom is fake. No. What do you mean languages are fake? They're a means of communication. You're talking about fake. It's a means of communication. No. Languages are an illusion created by the space aliens. Latin works amazingly for diagnosis conventions, right? Try creating them at the Tower of Babel. They created them. That's right. The Anunnaki created the languages in ancient Sumeria. So do I feel like, well, keep in mind, yes, it's working for a living, but Rod, if you want me to be quite frank with you, YouTube is less than 10% of my income. YouTube has not been my largest income stream in 7 or 8 years, 6, 7. Make sense? So my largest income stream is my coaching business. So my coaching and consultations. That's actually my biggest. Yeah. Right. But it's hard to qualify. So if we're talking direct money, which means what YouTube pays me or Google pays me in a direct deposit every month, you know, it's a fairly small chunk. Like YouTube itself probably is enough to cover my electric and grocery bill. Probably my phone, but it doesn't pay for my home. At least not at the moment. I mean, for a while it was doing better again a couple of years ago, but it's not massive. So my coaching is my biggest one. So even setting aside month-to-month coaching, anytime a client re-ups their package, because I have multiple clients who do 6-month packages, like year round, I have quite a few. That's probably more than I made on YouTube that same month. You know, and I don't get hit with a 1099 miss for it. What time is bro? I don't know. You'll have to look it up. What part of Texas? You're going to have to narrow this down to one time zone. Texas is pretty big. Or would you mean the part of Texas that I live in? Because you asked a specific question. You didn't ask me what time is it where I live. You asked what time is it in Texas. And I'm like, well, it will depend on what part of Texas. Okay. It is 6:19 in the morning here. I am just north of Houston. I'm out in the burbs in my hood. I was walking, I showed you guys my hood on that run the other day. Straight thug life. You know, Coach, you announce your departure from YouTube one day, or will there just be no more uploads? I don't know. Tyrone. Given that if it's still monetized, I would probably need to make a video once a month just to maintain the monetization status. Because why would I turn away free money for all the old content? Like, so even right now, if we go back, I still get money every month for videos made 10, 12 years ago. Like they still pay. Yeah, I'm Central Standard Time. So he would tell us Himalayan pink salt, yay or nay, people have it with water, especially during an extended fasting experience. I have a giant container of it I got at Costco still. Let me be very careful in how I answer this for accuracy, Michael. Also, Michael, I'm on Facebook. If you drop a comment there on Facebook, that boosts my AI. Facebook has been picking up really well again this week, so anything we can do to boost that. In the grand scheme of things, it's basically just sodium. However, are there trace minerals in there? Yes. You get a nice wide variety of trace minerals. There could be some benefits to that, but keep in mind, those trace minerals are very, very small, right? They're unlikely to have any significant benefits, all right? 4 likes in here. Tell them, Jason. No, I'm showing 9 in here so far. you know. So, we could argue about pink salt. We could argue about sea salt in terms of that. Um, yeah, I mean, Luke raises the interesting point with iodine, right? Yeah, 10 likes. Oh, we lost one. Someone took one away. Favorite Jean-Claude Van Damme movie? Said by the rhubarb giraffe. What a random name, a rhubarb giraffe. Favorite Jean-Claude Van Damme. With my outrageous French accent. All right. You stinky English pig dogs. Everybody in here is a stinky English pig dog right now. Most of y'all are. Just letting you know. Letting you know how I feel about it. Fighting goes in the wrong direction. All right. Favorite. I can't remember that many. Was Bloodsport? That was Jean-Claude Van Damme, right? I think. Right. I mean, Steven Seagal was the best. Steven Seagal still fights, right? He's got like a 12th degree black belt in Bushido. Can you do a kendo body imitation? Just I don't remember how to do a kendo body imitation, guys. I don't be remembering. I don't know. Hey guys, I'm just sitting here by the pool, eating these tomahawk steaks, working out 30 minutes a day. I got all these paid models sitting around me. They're only here because I'm paying them. The secret to my success, if you guys really want to make it in life, you need a rich family. Okay? This is where you start. You get a rich family to fund your business enterprises. If you can just get a rich mother to fund your business enterprises and let you live in her mansion for free while you start your own business so that you don't have, like, this is the key right here, guys. You can be a successful young entrepreneur if you just live with your parents and you don't pay any bills and then you don't have any expenses and overhead, and it lets you really focus on your business. Maybe your mom will loan you $100,000 for advertising. Like, this is the key, guys. If you do this, you can live this lifestyle. You can have the Lamborghinis. You can have the paid models sitting by the pool. You can eat tomahawk steaks and only work out for 30 minutes a day. Like, this is the key to success, right? Talk about that kendo body. And then I'll take Martin Burkham's successful system and I'll water it down. And we'll just take out the squats and deadlifts because most of my audience are lazy pussies looking for a shortcut. So if we take the squats and deadlifts out, take a successful proven system, and you take the hard stuff out, then a bunch of weak, lazy pussies will buy it. And you can make $1 million off of them. How's that for accuracy? I alone discovered the true method of renting models and Lambos. I have no clue, man. I have no clue what happened to Frenchie, dude. I have no idea. I don't even care. Not far off, honestly, Jason. Just too honest, right? Just call it like it is. Awesome. Appreciate it there, Michael. Dropping the comment there on the Facebook. Michael, if you're water fasting, I have no expert here, but I think some table salt plus powdered magnesium, maybe potassium, if your water may be beneficial. Yeah. I mean, hydration. Can people forget hydration is not just about water, right? Electrolyte status kind of matters. Greg, the type of guy to get impressions made of him by Coach Blaha. Yeah, someone's going to timestamp that and send it to him. You know, Just like when people bring up the stuff with, they don't keep up with the research though enough, and I have people bring up sodium and blood pressure, and it's like, guys, it's there's multiple factors. There's genetics, and it's looking at things like your sodium to potassium ratios. Like, this stuff matters, guys. Right? I'm genetically prone to that, so for me, I eat a lot of potassium because I do add some sodium, because especially if I've been sweating and I've been running in the heat. But the main thing is making sure that potassium is significantly higher. So that's why I eat high potassium foods. That's why I add potassium salts to my rice. That's why I try to get at least 500 milligrams of potassium citrate in my drinking water every day. Just keep my potassium really high. Um, just a pinch of sea salt in my coffee for my pre-workout. Right? How much calcium do we really need a day? I've seen many results from 500. I don't track it. Since I consume dairy every day, I don't really worry about my total calcium. It's probably pretty high. I mean, if you look at my meals yesterday, you'll notice several cups of yogurt. There's uh, Bare Life milk mixed with my protein shake. So I get a pretty good chunk of calcium. I'm sure I get at least a gram just from my diet. But probably, and it's going to depend on your age. The older you are, you need a little more. But I'd say probably, I mean, if you're worried about not getting enough, try to get close to a gram a day from whole foods, from your foods. Should be fine. I don't know that there's a benefit to supplementation. That's not panned out well in the literature as far as people supplementing calcium and it working particularly well compared to just simply getting it from foods. You know. But if you're consuming a reasonable amount of dairy, generally you're going to be okay. But again, it's also about calcium and magnesium. So you have to factor that in when it comes to a lot of the reasons you're consuming calcium. You would also need magnesium also. Yeah, I agree with Luke on that. He's probably not particularly why. Like, again, you can end up with really bad calcium to magnesium ratios. You can end up with calcium overdoses. You can get GI tract distress and stuff from calcium supplements that you don't need to have, right? Um, you know. Plus, we can get into that debate too. Luke, have you seen any of that stuff in the past? I don't know the current status on that, but isn't excessive calcium intake if magnesium is too low? Aren't there some potential atherosclerosis into that as a factor? I'm not up to now that got brought up. I recall reading something on that a number of years back. I didn't follow back up on it though, because I eat plenty of magnesium in my diet. Right? Because again, thinking in terms of that calcium score, and the calcification of your arterial plaque, um, which is when it's the problem. To some extent, the soft plaque you can reverse to a larger extent, with diet weight loss. But that calcified plaque is not your friend. You know, I get a good ratio of sodium to potassium, roughly 800 sodium. Well, that's pretty hefty. That sodium. Well, if you're in a colder place and you're not sweating, it might be okay. Luke knows where I'm about to go with this. If you're sweating a lot, that could be dangerous. Just making you aware of that. That's really low. Are you sure it's that low? All right. You could have some heart arrhythmia. right? You do need a certain, not just muscle hydration and performance, but technically for your heart to function correctly, you do have kind of like a minimum amount of sodium it needs. Okay. Yeah, just be careful of excessive sweating or anything. Because you could bump that sodium up and still be phenomenal, right? You could double that sodium with that much potassium and see no risk at all whatsoever. As Luke says, I see a lot of evidence to suggest that supplemented calcium leads to different ratios of bound and free and can lead to different clotting factors with flavor to try to keep it simple, right? I'm missing a clotting factor, by the way. I was born without one of mine. So when I cut myself shaving, it's like a spoon. But I won't end up getting puppier if I add more water retention. At that amount, you do realize like 1,500 milligrams of sodium is considered a low sodium diet, right? Just inject TB 500, Jason. Come on, that'll heal that cut right up. I know that's why I get people who are like, why don't you blast a bunch of gear? Why are you just on the replacement dose? I'm like, guys, I'm 40. I'm about to turn 49. My father's had 4 heart attacks. My mother died of an aortic dissection at age 47. You know, I have to think about these things. And I can reach my goals on a replacement dose of test. Like, I don't have any goals that can't be reached with that for me. I just hate getting moon face and I eat a lot of sodium. Well, that's also, you'll adapt to if you bumped it up. You'll get used to it. Your body will adjust aldosterone and be a thing. Oh, that's good to know, right? Your body adapts to certain intakes of things. It tries to reach some homeostasis. Assuming you're healthy, right? And you don't have dysfunctions in your body preventing it. What's fascinating, like we have these conversations here about health and these things, right? And then I have people on Facebook who just love to show up and argue with me and act like I don't know anything about nutrition or health. It's just phenomenal. Especially the carnivore types. My God. They're just such a plague. And you can't make a post about anything without a carnivore telling you they're a carnivore. They're truly the new vegans. I made a post about a joke about Arnold Schwarzenegger. And people, on the internet, and sure enough, carnivores had to chime in and say, you do know Arnold used a carnivore diet for his bodybuilding shows. They have to evangelize, Yeah, exactly. Oftentimes prescribed medication is for when your body's homeostasis trending is inhibited. Arnold also ate depot, right? He was big on primo bowling too. He was a depot and primo type of guy, which probably worked out really well. Genetics and then the primo bowling to take the depot bloat off. With primobolan itself acting quite effectively for many people as an aromatase inhibitor. And I've seen plenty of direct evidence in people's blood work of this. And then when you consider, right, to help with that methyl estrogen. But that methyl estrogen, once it's mitigated, technically is a weaker binding affinity to the receptor. Granted, it's still got that methyl group on it, so it has a longer half-life, but it has a weaker binding affinity. So that Primo works extremely well for taking depot blue off. And Arnold's a perfect example. You know, because he wouldn't have been using massive amounts of Primo. They were stuck with 100 milligram amps. That's what they had. So for him to even just get 400 in there, oh man, yeah, it has to do. So in short, Luke, Primobolan and Masteron are pretty much unavailable in the U.S. Because the sources shipping it from China through Hong Kong, they got busted in a big fentanyl bust is apparently what has happened, because they were also shipping fentanyl. Which is also then, think about that for a minute too, that at this point in the game, your same suppliers supplying the Primo rolls and Masteron rolls have fentanyl nearby. You know? Yeah, just things to think about. I think it's kind of getting to a point where you're going to have to look at it and go, realistically, I think most guys are, if they're going to do gear, they're going to have to focus on spillover pharma out of the US more and more, or just go more T clinics, simply being willing to prescribe a super physiological dose and then regulate it with aromacin is quite frankly going to be the best route for most guys moving forward. I honestly think, and I get it, you're not going to be a pro bodybuilder. You know, now granted, I still think the rolls that are coming out for the growth hormone have come back really good. So a person could go get a bunch of growth, right? And just go to their T clinic and find a doctor who'll prescribe 200 or 250 and keep their E2 in perfect range with a little aromacin, throw some growth in. That'll create phenomenal results for guys who want a really good physique, but they're not going to be pro bodybuilders. But the problem you're now having with the black market, you know, that's why we saw all these mass monsters. If people knew the price people were paying for gear of what has happened in the last five to 10 years, they would understand why you're seeing these massive bodybuilders. Right. Letrozole is very harsh. Right. They may have to. Well, because here's what's happened, Peppermint. It's been, I mean, Dan, those can be helpful in that case, but also growth hormone can too. I've seen serious athletes, like strength athletes, who've had tears who just injected insane amounts of growth hormone for 2 weeks. And the healing was absolutely astronomical also. Again, that'll make the doctors freak out, but technically it does work. Athlete's going to athlete. But when I say insane amounts, I'm talking something like 50 UI a day. So let's talk about why these guys have gotten so big. So anyone who really understands the black market of what people are paying for, say, Test, Trim, Deca today, what they're paying for the high grade Chinese growth hormone, someone with a $500 a month drug budget, you're talking Mr. Olympia level stacks at this point. We're not in that age anymore. So people say, well, what do you mean? It's like, okay, we'll do the math on it. High quality growth hormone is like $100 a kit now. Dude, you're paying $25 for a bottle of test, $25, $30 for a bottle of Tren these days. Do the math. I mean, I'll do the math right here. So let's say someone wanted to do something crazy in this current climate, and they're like, I will run 2 grams of test and a gram of Tren every week, which I do not recommend. With my age and family history, I would be dead in 6 months if I did that. That would be a death cycle. I would be dead. I'm certain of it beyond a reasonable doubt. So what are they looking at? Let's say they're paying $25. So that's $100 worth of Tren a month. What are they doing in tests? Maybe $80 of testosterone. All right. So if they're doing, how much growth could they do? Let's say they didn't want to spend more than 300 a month. So that's 300 units. But what if they get those 120 unit kits? I'm just going to do the math. Times 3. They could get away with 12 units of growth hormone a day and spend less than $500 in today's current economy, current gear climate. So now do you see why guys are that big? What happens if they go get a cheap bottle of insulin with it too? Spend another $20 a month for their insulin. They're at $500. How big are dudes getting on that sort of budget? The sheer fact that HGH is bioidentical is enough for me to my default consider it before TBC and BP for healing. My pragmatic side says you do a lot of tests, including genetic first, but yeah. Will test heal tendons? Probably not. All right. Not to the same extent something like growth hormone will. It just doesn't ramp up collagen synthesis the same way, unless you have low test and you get a replacement. That helps a little. But super physiological amounts of testosterone don't do a lot for collagen synthesis. Nandrolone might, but it's nowhere near what growth hormone will do. It's like 10% of what growth hormone will do, and a modest dose. So again, if someone was really looking at healing like that, those are the things to consider. But we know that in pro athletes all the time. Like that's always come out that they used a bunch of growth hormone after that injury and bounced back. That's always been the scuttlebutt out there. Right? And we have these conversations. And then, doctors are going to be reluctant to discuss that because of obvious reasons, but we know that that's what they do. And it's all out there. But, so professional athletes, that's pretty common for them to mega dose growth hormone after an injury because they need anything they can do to shave a month off their recovery time could be $1 million. Be $500,000. It could be the difference between renewing their next contract. They just do a bunch of growth hormone. Like if you're a pro athlete and you know that dropping $1,000 on growth hormone will shave a month off your injury, and you have a multi-million-dollar contract, what are you going to do? When you literally go that $1,000 growth hormone and maybe a couple weeks of side effects, it's worth $1 million. right? Legit IGF-1 specifically helps with bone fracture healing, right? Much appreciated. Do you think adding mobility exercise in routine will prevent? No, not really. Strengthening exercises. You need to strengthen your hamstrings more. Best advice I would give you if you're having injuries like that, what's up with your hamstrings? Weak hamstrings equals knee injuries in sports. They definitely are neglected. So there's a big factor you could change. Build your hamstrings more. Right. And factor in they too are often genetic freak athletes in terms of healing capacity. Right. You got to look at the work capacity. You got to look at those genetics. I mean, I've seen it in different clients and stuff. Yeah. Um, some of the freaks even just leave themselves to heal, right? And that makes sense too of how do they get that good at sports, because it's always, well, they work harder. Well, how do they work harder? Because the average person can't just work harder and not get beat up. So there's definitely some healing factors and hormonal things to where a lot of freak athletes have things like better collagen synthesis. Right? Yeah, being physically able to work harder is a genetic trait. Yeah, drugs matter too, but it's also a genetic trait. It's great. You're nearly in your 50s and still promoting health and fitness. Most people your age have given up. Yes, they have. Yes, they have. And then they wonder how I do it. It's funny because I see haters who are in their 20s. They'll talk smack, and then other people chime in. Like I have a bunch of other dudes in their 40s who follow me and stuff, and they're like, some of them are on gear and everything too, like steroid users and stuff, even in their 40s. Will chime in and be like, "You guys have no clue what you're talking about." They're like, "You have no idea." They're like, "What he does at his age is insane." Like, so I have the other athletes and lifters, they chime in. They're like, no, what he does is not normal. They're like, it is literally insane that he is able to do what he does. They're like, I can't even comprehend it. And these are guys on drugs near my age. But I've had to build my lifestyle around doing this. But let's talk about that straight edge. That living a very, very healthy lifestyle helps. It helps a lot. That's me marketing and pretending it's not genetics. Be like, don't you have a lot of pro athletes in your family, Jason? Well, I don't know. Do you have other record holding powerlifters and special horses people? I don't know what y'all talking about. So, to be fair, I heal really, 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 really fucking fast. But, realistically speaking, I do heal pretty quick. All I'm going to say is, even at 40 plus, you guys have seen me have muscle pulls, and I'm over here deadlifting over 500 again very, very quickly. So I'm not going to downplay and pretend there's no genetics there. But lifestyle is huge. Cutting inflammatory stuff out of your life. Like, I mean, just not drinking alcohol alone. Right? I can say that as a coach. When I have clients who literally cut back their drinking. I got one now in the UK. All of a sudden, now we're hitting all these squat PRs. He's getting less pulls. I've had him for years. He's like, I cut back to I only have 1 or 2 drinks with the boys on Friday night in a social setting. But yeah, cutting out the refined junk, cutting out the high saturated fat, like that's inflammatory. So there's your answer to that, Dad and the boys. What do I think about the carnivore diet? I think it is the worst fad diet trend I've ever seen in my life. It's even worse than veganism. And it's going to kill a lot of people. I saw a guy he's an MD who makes some reels. I saw it in my feed. He was pointing that out the other day. He was pointing out some of the anecdote of people who've had to quit the carnivore diet because they developed such massive health issues from it already. And he's like, all the carnivore people, they jump in and talk about all these positive stories, but people have only been doing it a year, 2 years, 3 years. He's like, but they're ignoring all the research on the long-term effects of the different aspects of it, the low fiber, the low antioxidant status, the excessive saturated fat, the elevated LDL. These are different confounding factors. And he's like, so they ignore that. And they say, but look at these positive anecdotes, but then they ignore the others. Like, but what about all the thousands of people who've chimed in and said, hey, it fucked me up really bad already? Well, they just get blocked on all the carnivore groups. Then they tell their stories. I get them in my own comments. I get posters who come in here and go, yeah, you're right. They're like, my gut is permanently messed up. They're like, my GI tract has been severely damaged from carnivore already, and I'm struggling to get it back on point now that I've had to quit doing it. Yeah, it's very much a cult, and it spreads so rapidly, and it's because people lose fat quickly because they're eating no carbohydrate and no refined foods, and so then they feel better because they're losing some fat. But they're also, it's education plus selective bias plus cult movement is a dangerous combo. And then they have a few frauds who are putting out stuff, Baker and so on, while ignoring the larger data. And you can show them data, and they the way they argue against it, it's just, I'm like, okay, so what about your pro keto study we had this last year that I linked all this stuff on that proved, keeping in mind, this was a case of funded by keto people, funded by keto interests. And they tried to hide the data because it came back, they cherry picked their group, and their own pro keto study came back fucking horrific. Like their data was terrifying. Their data, when they were forced to release it, when other researchers pressured them to release the numbers instead of the conclusions, was terrifying. It basically is telling you that if your LDL is elevated from a ketogenic type diet for an extended period of time, that it's going to kill you, even if you got really fit doing it. If you want to interpret what their data actually says in the long term, like, yeah, it shaved 20 years off your life. What is an independent study? Right. Man, Luke, that's the point. They rigged the study. That's why it's scary. All right, think about the group that they used as their magical standard. They cherry picked. Okay, 85% of the people in that group were white males. We already know we're the least at risk of heart disease. Cherry picked. All right, white males who worked out and had a healthy body fat percentage. Let's use this group who are on a ketogenic diet. Like, and we're going to show how great it is. Right? I mean, seriously, it's like middle-aged white males who work out, who lift weights, and are all at normal body weights and at healthy body fat. They're all under 20% body fat, right? Golden. Like this is your perfect group right here. Like they made this beautiful test group. And we're going to use them to collect our data from. And then the data. You want me to summarize what my art nemesis Lane Norton, who has a PhD in nutrition, had to say about the data? He was horrified, by the way. He was actually pissed that they held this data. He actually yelled about it. In his words, he said, "This is the amount of plaque accumulation I would expect to see in an untreated type 2 diabetic." I recall that's what he more or less said. That this is the amount of new arterial plaque formation that you see in an obese type 2 diabetic who's not taking their medication. And this is the best group that they could put forward. Like they cherry picked this group and it still had those results. That is the nail in the coffin. That study, and let's keep in mind, you can't say big pharma, you can't say big grain, you can't say anybody. It was funded by ketogenic groups. All the researchers were pro-keto researchers. They're all biased towards keto diets. All of the funding came from keto interests, like people who literally sell and make keto supplements and stuff. Okay. Everyone involved in the study has a direct interest and bias towards ketogenic diets. Who cherry picked a group to find the best possible group to be healthiest and show the best results. And then they hid the data because it's pro keto. They wouldn't release the data till other researchers pressured them into it. All right, Callum says, "Yeah, have a nice day. Ice cream machines are calling. Have fun, man. We'll make your money." Okay. And then they release the data and it's that bad. Like that is the nail in the coffin. And this is before we even get to carnivore. That's only dealing with the high saturated fat LDL in the carnivore end. What happens when we have that discussion about fiber and antioxidants? Because what's the line these clowns pull? Well, you don't need fiber in your diet if you're not consuming carbohydrate because it's just there to regulate blood sugar. Do you know how moronic that statement is? Any person who says that the only reason we consume fiber is to regulate carbohydrate and blood sugar has no business discussing nutrition at all. Right? Well, we could have a conversation about medical keto and what's been found to have the best blood markers. But yeah, the excessive saturated fat keto, this is what we're talking about. you know, because ketogenic diets are used for medical purposes. And what they actually found, this is going to piss people off. Do you know who has the best blood work when given a medical keto diet? I'm going to be crucified for saying this, but it's what the research shows. People who get their fat from seed oils instead of the saturated fat actually have better blood work and lower inflammation in their body. In the actual metabolic ward for medically prescribed keto diets, like epilepsy studies. Yep. Yeah, because they prescribe it for epilepsy successfully. But even found some things in the literature, specifically epilepsy studies from the 90s that reflect it, right? So, but let's come over in the fiber thing. When you look at all the data that we have on gut health and fiber intakes and everything, anyone who's telling you that the purpose of fiber is purely to regulate carbohydrate absorption is such a profoundly ignorant statement that it can't be taken, like they cannot be taken seriously. That's the equivalent of listening to a 4-year-old talk to you about your physics paper coming up. And they're like, I thought the rocket fall. This is where you're at. Because we look at all the data of what we know about fiber intakes, gut biome variability, the way that we're seeing all this stuff with gut health, the way that it affects mental health, your immune system, the way it affects neurotransmitters in the brain, so on and so forth. Like the data that we're pulling over the last decade on gut biome and the way it affects all the systems of the body. And then we see how fiber diversity positively affects gut biome. No, fiber is part of your, let's talk about what the real value is. Let's set aside the blood sugar. No one gives a shit. If you lift weights and you're fit, you're not concerned with blood sugar spiking anyways. You could live on white rice just fine. But how about having a strong functioning immune system? How about having proper brain function? Dandy and the boys, Dad and the boys. Thank you for taking time to answer my question. Gotta go. Have a great day. Take care, man. Probably wind this one down soon too. It's already 7 a.m. Sun is coming up. So these are things that we need to be talking about. And we know that low fiber diets are harmful. It's been studied repeatedly. But they're saying, oh, Big Pharma wants you to eat fiber. Yeah, there's literally been neurons found in the stomach now. By the way, tons more research needed, but fascinating discovery. All right, bringing more to the gut brain term. Yeah. So, and we know this. And even if they want to appeal to nature, let's set aside data and let's just use the appeal to nature fallacy they love to use. Paleolithic humans weren't eating all meat. Their fiber intake was higher than ours. So if we want to appeal to nature, we're supposed to be eating over 100 grams of fiber a day if we're going to use that logical fallacy, because that's what your ancestors did. So I think we'll see the death blows to the carnivore diet will be when Jordan Peterson and Sean Baker have their first heart attacks. I think that will go ahead and be the death blow to it. That'll end that little cult finally, and it will happen. So I didn't say if, I said when. Right, it's crazy that most Western people get less than 30 grams a day, right? I eat like a kilo of green vegetables a day myself. So again, let's talk about how do I recover from all the things I do at my age. I don't know, lifestyle, inflammation control, antioxidant status in my diet. Now, I'm not going to add it up because I can't give you time frames. I mean, Sean Blaker's blood work a couple years ago was terrifying. No, it's just bodybuilders. Because keep in mind, guys, I can't predict heart attacks based on diet. I can predict heart failure based upon the physical symptoms I see. Right? Does Jordan Peterson turn purple and have trouble breathing? No. You know, hence the difference. No, but Sam Sulek does. Actually, had someone chime in with that. Well, they're like trying to compare me with him. Well, you should be stronger than blah, blah, blah. It's like, do you not understand how many drugs Sam did? Right. Well, we can assume Sean Baker sticks to it pretty rigorously. We've seen his blood work. And him being an MD is irrelevant. People say, well, he's a medical doctor. I think no, cardiologists have ripped him and said, as a medical doctor, he should know better. And I'm looking at his blood work as someone who cardiology is my field, and he is going to die of a heart attack. Did anyone like? Are you guys aware of how high? So Luke, you do clinical stuff. Did you know that he put up blood work once where his LDL-C was at 400? With anything over 100 oftentimes being prescribed a statin. And then he justified it and said it's fine. Cholesterol doesn't cause atherosclerosis. It's a myth. Now keep in mind, he's an MD. And he justified this in public. His fasting glucose was really high too. Yeah. But can you imagine having an LDL that high? And again, same thing, the fasting glucose through the roof. Why? Because he's insulin resistant. So, and here's what's phenomenal. Like, this is how dumb people are with anecdote. They will say, but look how strong he is. To my face. I mean, obviously, age being a factor. I mean, we can't discount age. We get weaker into our 40s and 50s oftentimes. But anecdote, let's just go with the anecdote. But he got weaker on carnivore. Like, they can't use his strength levels as evidence because he was stronger when he ate carbohydrates. Are they forgetting he was a national champion level power lifter when he was younger? That he competed in powerlifting at an elite level when he was younger. He's weaker. Now people say, well, but his age. It's like, okay, that's fine. But you can't claim someone the carnivore diet is amazing for performance when a person got weaker while on it. Like, that's not evidence to its benefit. Yes, it might have only been the fact that he's, 15 years older now. Okay, I'm sure that's a factor. But you can't use that as evidence that the carnivore diet is great when the person is literally weaker on the carnivore diet after years than they were beforehand. Like, significantly so. He was a national champion. Like he was like a 700-pound deadlifter, right? I think the highest I've seen was 400 plus pounds obese one with a 350. So yeah, his was higher, and he justified it, and it's like, really, guys, are we really gonna do this? But this little cult will die out. Coach can get. Well, I mean, I'm PRing all my tricep exercises every week. Like the tricep training is really, really, really dialed in. So more triceps as I get leaner will work wonders for me. We probably need to train pretty soon, though, don't we? I'll see what I get on the bench today. That's what I care about the most, given this amount tricep is. I mean, my triceps are the strongest they've been if I go off of my supplemental work since my 20s. People almost be like, why don't you switch back to closed grip now, right? I just can't get my head around someone alone thinking for a healthy person, not medically prescribed for disease, isolating your diet to not being an omnivore is a good idea. Exactly. I haven't been cutting in months. I've been recomping blackjack. I'm still sitting at 209 to 210, up to about 211. It may start going down now that I'm protein overeating. All right. Yeah, there are reasons why plant eating and meat eating animals are the way they are, and we are not that, right? I did, but let me be clear. When I say I dropped my carbs, I just cut down my rice and added ridiculous amounts of protein in. Like, let me be clear. When I say I reduce carbs, it's not like I'm doing low carbs. I mean, I could try to ballpark it. I'm probably having 400 grams of carbs a day, so ballpark. So that's cutting them down. I bet you I'm not having more than 400 grams of carbs a day. So for me, that's definitely lower. But I don't need more than that with my training volumes. I don't know. I force protein later anytime I get hungry after I finish my carbs. I'm not even aiming for a number. I could estimate it and say I probably had 400 grams of protein yesterday. 350, 400 ballpark. So the protein overfeeding will probably make me start leaning down by default. But my only so carbohydrate sources. I had 2 cups of basmati rice, dry cups, and I had half a camel oat. But then I got a little bit of some out of the other half right before bed. So, and everything else was protein foods. I probably had a kilo of broccoli, had a bunch of peppers. But I ate about 2 pounds of chicken breast, probably 3 scoops of whey protein, bunch of Greek yogurt, a little bit of Fairlife milk, Yep. I'm probably going to wind this stream down though. It's not many viewers in here. So I'm going to wind down the Facebook. Shut down the tubes. All right, guys. Love you guys, and I'll catch you in one of these later today.